Okay, well, we've looked at how to use Flask and Ajax together along with jQuery and JSON. And the thing is, if we run our program here, program here, Python 3 book loader. Let's see here. Okay, Python 3. Not sure why I wasn't doing autocomplete there, but okay. All right, so if we run our program now, and we take a look, if we do, there's a little preview of what we're going to look at in a second, but if we do our login, well, we're not actually able to vote for a book, which is what we'd like to be able to do. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to get rid of the original table over here and replace it with an Ajax version of the table here. So we'll keep that. But I'd also like to add a little button over here, a submit button. Not a submit button, but like a vote button. So if you click on the vote button, you'll be able to vote. And I'd like the vote to change in real time. So if I just click on the vote button right here, as soon as I click on it, boom, you see that vote change and there's no refresh of the screen. So there's a refresh. I just click, boom, and I get the vote. Okay. So, well, how would that work? Well, first of all, why don't we get into the HTML and see if we can change the HTML so that it looks more like what we would like to see here. That beep is really annoying. It's not doing autocomplete for some reason, which is weird. Okay. Every time you hear that beep, you know how many times I do autocomplete. I do it all the time. All right, so we're going to get rid of the regular form that was populated using the template library from Flask, which is pretty cool, and we're going to use Ajax instead. So we have Ajax form, we've got our Ajax table, and the thing is, we actually aren't going to populate the form at all from here. And the reason for that is we're going to let Ajax do the populating. All right, so we have a almost an empty table with one exception here. We've got title, author, ISBN, votes. Yeah, that's all good. Okay, perfect. So we'll save that. And we will go to our book folder.py file. So actually, why don't we take a look at this since we just made that change. All right, we'll save that for a moment. We'll just rerun this. So, all right, it's running. We'll go back here to the browser, click refresh. All right, and now you see we have a table, which if we do Ajax submit, it gets populated. And oh, that's cool. Or when we click it, we get a different color. Yeah, very nice. But anyway, the only way the table gets populated is via Ajax now. All right, so we're making a request from the JavaScript code to the backend. We're getting an array that's in JSON form sent back from the backend that consists of books, and then we render those in the table. Okay, cool. So what I'd like to do next then is I'd like to have this array auto-populated. And I think I'm also going to clean up that coloring thing, because although it's cool, it would be very annoying for users to see that over and over again. So to clean that up, what I'll do is I'll go to static survey.js. All right, so we've got some toggle options here, which I'm not going to use. I'm going to get rid of that. And we've got, I'm going to get rid of that and clean the code up a little bit. And now what I have here is an interesting situation, because when the submit button is pressed, the form gets updated, which, now that I think about it, that's probably not what I want to do. I just like the form to get filled in, and then I want to click on a vote button. So maybe what I'll do instead is I'll get rid of this Ajax form. I'll get rid of that handling the Ajax form. We'll clean this up. And we will let's say, okay, so that's pretty good. So now when we refresh the page, the survey will get loaded. And this is an alternative to using the template library in the back end. So let's do a refresh. Okay, so no more fancy stuff. The Ajax submit button, it actually refreshes the page now because I unregistered unregistered the event handler, the onSubmit event handler for that. So let's go back to the code here and clean this up a little bit more. All right, we don't need a form anymore. We're just going to have a table. And we don't need the submit button anywhere either. Really, all we want here is a table. I don't even know if we need the table. We might, but, well, we need the table, but I don't know if we need that table ID. Okay, cool. So it's not a lot going on here other than basically a little bit of a placeholder for the table that's going to get populated. Okay, so let's just refresh that. Okay, cool. So now remember, this stuff is not getting populated by the template library. It's getting populated by an Ajax call. We can take a look at that Ajax call right here. That's saying get Ajax survey. Now, even saying survey now doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't really like that name. We're really just getting the books. So maybe what we can do is we won't call it Ajax survey anymore. We'll just say get books. So we now have a handle that's called get books. All right, and let's go to our book voter code. And there's a handle for login. And we don't have a regular survey anymore. All we have is something that was called Ajax survey, but we're going to change this to get books. So we're just getting the books here. And that's what this does. That's what that code does. The login is still good, but there is a little issue here. So right here in this if is valid, it says return regular survey. Well, we don't actually want to do that anymore. What we want to do here is we want to return survey.html here. And I'll explain this in a second. Okay, so when we're doing the login, what we're going to do is we are going to either have an invalid login, which will present the login page, or a valid login, which will go to the survey.html page. When we go to the survey.html page, we have basically a template for a table that's going to get filled in with an Ajax call to the back end. All right. Now, the Ajax call to the back end is here in survey.js. It's now called getBooks. So when you call getBooks, we will get back from our Ajax call. This is JavaScript code. So from our Ajax call, we will get back a list of books, which we can then turn into a book title, a book author, ISBN, votes, rows in a table. That's what that map does for us. Fantastic. All right. So let's try it out and make sure we didn't break anything. Ruh-roh. That doesn't look good. What was the error? Let's check to make sure that that got saved. Nope, it didn't get saved. That's why we didn't see it. All right, let's try it again. Okay, so things are good. The getBooks hook or handles the backend's working, and a route to the backend, that's what we should be calling it. And so now what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a little button show up next to each one of these books, and if I click on that button, boom, I get a vote for that book, and the votes go up. All right, so how do we do that? Well, first, let's get that button to appear. So where are we going to place that button? Well, we're going to go to the JavaScript. We're going to go to the JavaScript that generates the rows of the table, and we're going to add a new row. And that row is going to be a button. So the type of the button is going to be button, and the class of the button is going to be vote button. You'll see why I need that class in a second. And then I'm going to say vote. All right, and then I'm going to delete the rest of that. So this allows me to create a vote button. And it has a class of vote button, which we're going to use that to register vote button event handlers in a moment. It's going to have some text that says vote, and that's pretty much it. So we just added an extra column. All right, so let's just save that and redraw, make sure that's still working. Oh, wow, look, there's some vote buttons. By the way, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I keep doing little editing and then saving and then checking to make sure something works. That's a really nice way of editing a program when you're making changes, to make sure that a change that you didn't make 5 minutes ago doesn't break something that you're doing right now. So it's a good strategy to use. You try to build things up in little bits to get to the solution to a problem. Now, when I press these votes, nothing happens. And that's because those votes have not been registered as event handlers yet. So what I need to do is I need to register them as event handlers. So how do I do that? Well, what I'm going to do is I can't do it there, I have to go over here. What I'm going to do is write a little bit of code that takes care of my get. That's my get. Okay, after the get, once I've gotten the books, I need to register the event handler for that button. All right, so that is going to look like this. Vote button is a class, and so I do dot vote button in jQuery to identify it, and then I'm going to say click. So if there's a click on any button that's a vote button class button, I want to do the following function, anonymous function. All right. So what I'd like to do is just do an alert with, let's just do E for the moment, okay? Now, E is the event that the event handler was triggered on. And so if I can interrogate E and find out some useful information about it, I'm going to be in a good place. Now, I can tell you that there's a way to go from this E, the event that is associated with this vote button. There's a way to go from that E to the button, and from that button, because the button is embedded in this TD, I should be able to get to the sibling TDs, and then I could get the ISBN. And if I know the ISBN for the row that the button was clicked on, then I know the book that I just voted for, and I can ask the back end, another Ajax call from JavaScript. I can ask the back end to do a vote. We can write some code to make that happen in just a second. Okay, so let's save that and see if, see if our vote event handler gets executed. Yeah, okay, so it's not super exciting, but it says object, but it's definitely getting executed. All right, awesome. So now what I've got to do is I've got to go from this vote event handler that's getting executed to getting the actual ISBN. All right, so there's a sneaky, not sneaky, but kind of a cool way of doing this, and I'm going to show you. So I'm going to set a breakpoint at that event handler. All right, and so let's do the vote for the talisman. All right, cool. So what we can do is we can start interrogating E. So if you look at E, we can scroll down here a little bit and we can see there's a lot of interesting things about E, but one of the things that's interesting about E is this thing that says button, vote button. Yeah. Oops, I'm looking at elements there. I didn't mean to do that. I want to look at sources here. If we scroll down a little bit, you can see a lot of cool things. This thing says 2-element button, vote button. This thing says target, button, vote button. So if I look at that button, vote button, and I look around a little bit more, maybe I can find, now I'm at the button. If I go from the button to the button's parent, I'll get the data field that encloses the button. So maybe there's some way of getting, so we're talking about target. If there's some way of getting, there's something that's called offset parent. And I think there's also something called parent. Let's try it this way. Okay, so I'm going to say, hey, E dot target Okay, so e.target is the button element. Now, if I get the parent element, that is the TD that encloses the button. All right, now you can see there's autocomplete because I've got some stuff that I used to experiment here. So if I do e.target.parent element, that's the TD. So let's just do that. Okay, you can see that is the TD, and we can expand this a little bit. That is the TD. Yeah, so this is the TD that encloses the button. All right, so if we want to take a look at that, there's the button, there's the TD that encloses the button. That's what we just grabbed. All right. Now that TD has siblings, so we can list them. All right, and you can see right down below, there's a TD, there's a TD, there's a TD, there's a TD, and then there's some other information. All right, and if we look here, you can see the 4 siblings, TD, 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 TD. Those 4 TDs are the ones that we are interested in because they're the data elements of the row that we're currently on. The one we really want, though, is this one, the ISBN one. So it would be cool if, well, positionally, we could just grab this. We could know that well, let's grab it just for fun. Sub 1. Let's see what sub 1 looks like. Well, sub 0. So this is the first sibling. All right. That's the talisman. All right. Sub 1, that's Stephen King. Sub 2, that's the ISBN. So we could do blah, 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 siblings, e.target parent element, siblings, sub 2 dot inner text. All right, if we do that, we're going to get that string, and that is the ISBN. The thing is, I don't like doing things positionally, because what if they decide that the programmer decides to reorder the columns, right? Maybe ISBN isn't always the 3rd column, 0, 1, 2. So we can be a little bit more flexible by doing this instead, by saying, well, siblings has a filter function, and you can say I'm only interested in siblings with the following characteristics. So I could say only siblings that belong to the ID class. Well, that actually doesn't return anything. Doesn't return a specific sibling. Or let's say ISBN class. There. Okay. Nothing's actually getting returned when you do that. You see there's a length of 0 there, so we're not getting anything if we do that. And that's because I haven't set that up yet. But if we go to elements, and if I set up a class here, right here, for that ISBN that has a class of ISBN, or maybe I'll just set up a class for each one of these. So for whatever reason in the future, if I want to identify particular elements, I could. Then I would be able to get that particular class or particular column in the row. All right. So let's see if we can set that up. All right. Well, all the work of doing that kind of stuff is happening here in our survey JavaScript file. So I'm going to say ID equals, class equals votes, and class equals ISBN, and class equals author, and class equals title. Okay, so I'm going to save that, And now we will refresh this. Okay. And now I'm going to vote for the book that I wanted, go to the console, and type this again. So this says the E is the event. Get me the element that the event happened on, which is our vote button. Get me the parent element of the vote button, which is the TD, the data part of the row that we're on for the vote button. Get me the siblings, and that's going to be title, author, ISBN, and vote TDs. And then filter out by the siblings by the class ISBN. So I'm only interested in siblings that have the class ISBN. So when we do that, what we end up with is a single element that is TD the ISBN class element. And I can further, if I say inner text, whoops, let's try dot inner, oh, sorry, sub-0, because it's always the first element, inner text. There we go, 1111. So that is the ISBN number. All right, now I have the ISBN number. So why don't I take all that information that's right here, copy this whole thing, and that's kind of our probe that gets us the piece of information we need, and we'll put that in the event handler for the vote button. So right here, we'll say ISBN equals the inner text of the ISBN data element in the row. And then we're going to say alert ISBN. So we'll see that text get printed out. Okay, cool. Well, let's refresh this and click on vote and let it continue. And now it says 1111. Cool. The vote still isn't happening yet, but we're getting close. 2222. And finally 4444. Okay, so how do we actually get the vote to happen? Well, the way we do that is we now have to wire up the vote button event handler for the row that the vote is occurring on. We have to wire that up to another Ajax backend request. So we could spend a good, huge chunk of time, but we're running out of time in the course. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do Ajax requests. So one way you can do requests is with a get. That's what I've got here. There's a lot of other ways though. But to keep things simple, we're going to just do a simple get request. So the get request is going to be here. And instead of saying get books, we're going to say send vote. All right. And the response from send vote is going to be a new vote, a new book, which will use the information in that new book to update. This is a book that will be a book that has been updated with the correct vote count in the data store. So that's what we're going to do. But first, I'm going to say alert book, just to show that it works. I just want to see that it works. Okay, so just to be clear, what we're doing here is we're doing an Ajax call to the backend. The route to the backend is going to be called send vote. And send vote is going to update the vote count for the book with the ISBN that we know about. Now we know that the ISBN right now, the ISBN number is this thing called ISBN. So what we're going to do, we're going to get kind of sneaky here, is we can create a query string by just doing question mark ISBN equals plus ISBN. Now, when you fill out a form there and you click submit, there's two ways that that form information can get to the back end. One way is as part of a post. So there's form data that will go along with the post. The other way is through a query string. That's what this query string is. Sendvote question mark equals ISBN. And I'm going to demonstrate that query string in operation separately in just a moment. But as far as the backend knows, it doesn't know that your query string wasn't built manually like we're building it right here, or wasn't built using a form. It doesn't really matter to the backend. So it shouldn't really matter to us either. So we're going to build it manually. We're going to say, hey, ISBN is going to be this ISBN number. The ISBN number was taken from the data element in the row where the button, the ISBN data element in the row where the button was clicked. And we've just sent instructions to update the vote. Now, the result of that is going to be that a book will be returned with the new vote count updated. And then we'll take that information and we'll update the table with that in a moment. But first, let's just see if we can get this to work. Okay, cool. So this takes care of the front end. This is the JavaScript code that'll get executed when we click on the vote button. But we do have to handle the back end. So we're going to have to create a route. That was our get books route. We're going to have a very similar kind of route. But this is going to be the send vote route. Okay. Now I notice it's called Ajax survey. I don't like that. We're going to call this get books. There, and we're going to call this send vote here. I like the names to be. They don't have to be, but I think it's cleaner. Okay. Cool. Interesting. We're not using that error thing at all. All right. So we need to get the ISBN. So when sendvote gets called, remember I'm sending that query string ISBN equals the ISBN number. All right, so I need to get that. So I'm going to ask for that from Flask by using something called request args get. So ISBN equals request args get. So I now have the ISBN number. Okay, now that I have the ISBN, I can do create my DAO, and instead of doing books equals DAO.select all, I'm going to do book equals DAO.select by ISBN. And I'm going to pass in the ISBN number that came in on the send vote request. All right. Now, that's going to return a book. That book has the old vote count on it. So we've got to update the vote count. So I'm going to say book.votes equals book.votes plus 1. All right, and then I'm going to actually tell the DAO to update. Hey DAO, update this book. Okay, so now the data store has a record of the updated book, but the front end, the stuff running in the browser, doesn't have that updated value yet. Now, I guess I could just update it on the front end, but it'd be cooler to send back as a JSON object. So that's what I'm going to do. I have my book. I want to JSONify it, and all I have to do to JSONify it is say book.serialize. Now, that will take the book create a set of a dictionary of key value pairs, and then we JSONify it and send that back as a JSON response. It's a little bit different than what's up here, the return JSONify serialized books. There was one extra step. We needed that extra step because we weren't just serializing one book, but we were serializing all the books in the collection and putting them in a list. So, all right. So that takes care of that. So let's go over here and do a refresh. And it looks like we have an error. So let's figure that out. That's get books. Let's see, we'll take a look in Chrome here and see what happened. Oop, it looks like I have an error in my JavaScript. Okay, so let's fix that error. There's my get. Oh, yeah. So we just need to, that get needs to be closed, semicolon. Okay, I think we should be good. Let's do a refresh again. Okay, so there are my books. And now if I want to vote for one of my books, let's set an alert, a breakpoint here for the vote. And I'll click vote and let's see what happens. So it looks like the vote was successful. We had 19 votes. We just, because we're on line 18, it means that we were, oh yeah, it looks like things came back okay. So we're on line 18, it means we're about to do the alert book, which will just print out, well, there's the book. Stephen King, ISBN, with a title of the talisman, the votes is 19. But that's not the right number of votes. Okay, well let's let it finish and see what happens. Yeah, it doesn't look like the vote count got updated. Also, the votes didn't change in the back end, so I wonder what happened there. Let's take a look, shall we? Huh. Oh, book votes equals book votes. That's why. You probably saw that while I was writing that and said, hey, how come he's not up there? Okay, so book votes equals book votes plus 1. Okay, that's good. There was a little error there. Okay, let's see if that fixes the problem. I know it won't. There's another error, but let's see where we end up. All right, so we'll refresh. I want to vote for my book. Now I'm going to put my cursor over this and look, the votes updated to 20. That's fantastic. So we went from 19 to 20. So the backend definitely knows about that and has recorded it. And we'll just continue executing. But the vote count in the front didn't update. All right, I did another vote. Now it's showing the backend votes is 21, but the vote count in the front is still not updating. The reason why is because I'm not updating the row here. The row is not being updated by my jQuery JavaScript code. Now, if I do a full refresh of the page and reload everything, we will see the vote being updated. So let's do that. I'm going to click reload. It does show the votes correctly as 21. But if I try to increase the votes again, and again, I'm not seeing them updated locally until I do a full refresh. All right, so how do I fix that? Well, all I need to do is something very similar to what is in this line right here. I'm able to, based on the event, target the ISBN class data field. So I can target the votes class data field and just set the inner text equal to the value of the book vote that's returned back on the callback from the Ajax call. So let's take a look at what that will look like. So let's get to the JavaScript code. So instead of doing this alert, what we're going to do instead is we're going to grab the votes class, and set the inner text of the votes class equal to the value of the book.votes that's returned from the back end. So this value book will contain a book object that's been encoded in JSON, but it's, as it turns out, it looks exactly like a book object would look on the back end. So if you say book.votes, you'll be able to access the votes for the book. And in fact, that's what we were doing right here, right? Book.title, book.author. This is all an easy to work with object that's been converted to an object from JSON data. So, all right, so let's try that and see if that works. Feeling pretty good about this. All right, let's reload it again. Now if I click vote, and assuming that book.votes is 24, so we should see this field, the parent element, siblings, votes, that data field get updated. Let's just do that. Look at that, it just went from 23 to 24. Okay, I'm gonna turn off debugging, and now we can watch the voting happen automatically. That is pretty sweet, and that's really fast. And look, you can notice that it's not, by the way, this should, I know folks like the Dark Tower. I think the Dark Tower is pretty cool, but I think the Talisman is my favorite. Anyway, this is now 40 votes, and that's the way it should be. And you can see it just happens super fast. Any one of these is going to go up just fine. So there you go. That shows you how you can use jQuery, Ajax, JSON, put them all together and have something that looks very lively. It looks like it's running local. And the cool thing is, if you start up this application again, all these votes that are being recorded right now are recorded in the data store.